What's up guys, Noah here. Welcome back to another Python video. Today we're going to be going over else-if statements. So have your idle open. If you don't know where I am, go watch the first video in this playlist. I have a whole video explaining how to download idle, how it works, how to start typing code. So let's get into it. So else-ifs are kind of a variation of if statements and else statements. So right now we know that if we do something, and then if we don't have to do this, we have our else. So we have our if, and then we have else. What else if allows us to do, let's say if we have a number in here, and then we're like, okay, it's not this number, and then it goes right to else. But what if we want more checks? That's the point of an else if statement. So the syntax of an else if is called elif. They just kind of combined else and if. And then same thing with if statements, you have your parentheses, and then you have your colons. So I'm going to give you an example of how to use it, because that's, I feel like, the best way to show it. So if I'm going to make a function that checks how great a number is. So say number checker, and then it's going to take in a some number. Okay, cool. So I'll show you with if statements, if we wrote this, and then with else if statements. So if we did with all if statements, so we can say if num is greater than, we'll start off high, we'll start off 50, greater than, equal to 50, print greater than 50. Cool. And then we'll say if num is greater than or equal to, say 40, and then we'll print greater than, let's say greater than 40. And I'll just do one more. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. So we'll just say 20. So if say num is greater than equal to 20, print greater than 20. Cool. So I'm not going to do any return statements right now. I'll just simply do this just to show you guys. So if we call number checker, and if we run 60, as you can see, it hits every single if statement because our num is greater than 50, greater than 40, greater than 20. And then if we had like 30, for example, it only print this last one. But basically, it's great that, yeah, I mean, it is greater than 50, it is greater than 40, it is greater than 20. But in reality, when you want something like this, the only thing we wanted to print was that, oh, it's just greater than 50. Because if it's greater than 50, it's already implied that it's greater than 40 and 20. That's when else if statements come in. So with if statements, if you don't have a return statement inside of them, because remember, return statements just completely end a function, it's going to bounce from 1 to 2 to 3, on and on and on. That's the point of having if statements back to back to back. They have no correlation to each other. They'll just hit every single one. But if I had an else if statement and then another else if statement, so now if we run it, it only prints greater than 50. So what else if statements do is that now these are all one big chunk. Think of this like one big else if statement. It's going to do one thing or another. It's only going to do one thing when you combine else if statements with each other. So obviously you always have to start off with an if statement. But if you had if, it can do every single one of them. But now that we have else ifs, it's only going to do one of them. So now if we put in 60, we say if num, which is 60, is greater than or equal to 50, print this. It is. So this is true. And now instead of going to these, it's just going to skip right over them and go right to the end. So that's the power of else if statements. They allow you to jump over and check for one thing instead of here where we're checking for multiple things. Another way that we could have done this is we could have added an else statement now. So you can combine these as many ways you want. But the rule of thumb is you always have to start off with an if to be able to access elifs or else's. So then we can say else, we can just simply print not greater than at least 20. So now if we put in 10, for example, it's going to bounce to here. It's not greater than or equal to 50. Bam, it's going to bounce to here. Not greater than or equal to 20. Going to bounce, or 40, bounce to here. Not greater than or equal to 20. And then we have our else. So this else is the else for basically this whole thing. If none of these go, then bam, you have your else. And then if we had our if statements, the only thing now that this else statement is attached to is this guy. So we'll still get the same result. But now this guy is the only one that's attached to the else statement instead of the entire chunk of code that we wanted being attached to the else statement. So that's really it for else ifs. They're just another way to improve your checks, basically. So the best quiz that I can give you guys for this is checking for grades. It's like obviously the letter grades convert into number grades. So we're actually going to combine some skills from last videos as well. So write a function that takes in a number grade and returns a letter grade. So now we're going to have a number grade come in, and then it's going to return a letter grade, if you remember from our return statements video. So only have one return statement. This is just so you guys practice with using else ifs. And then you must use an else. And obviously this implies you have if statements as well, because you can't use else if statements and else statements without if statements. So you must use an elif and an else. So we'll say a 90 plus is an A, 80 plus is a B, 70 plus is a C, say 60 ABC is a D, and then if you're less, well, that's greater than, then you're failed. So this would be 80 to 89. I just realized this would be, this would look better. 60, 69, and then less than 60 is your fail. So go ahead. I know the else if video is very short, but this combines quite a few topics from my last videos. See if you can solve this. If not, no worries. I'll give you a minute. Go ahead. Alright, hopefully you paused the video and solved it. If not, I'm going to go over it right now. Let's get into it. So first we need to write a function that takes in a number grade and returns a letter grade. So we'll call it def, and then we'll say letter grader. And then we have to take in a number grade. So we're going to take in a number. Cool. So we need to return a letter grade, and we only allowed to have one return statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the thing that I'm returning, I'm going to name it out. I'm going to set equal to an empty string. Right now, there's nothing in it. So our first check is you always want to start with the greatest number. If you're doing anything with numbers and if statements and else statements, you always want to start with the greatest thing. So if our number is greater than or equal to 90, then out is equal to, and we said it was an A. Sweet. So then else if number is greater than 80, out is equal to B. So you might be asking, what if the number is 90? how is it not going to be set to be? So if you remember with if and else, if this guy is true, so if we have 91, although 91 is greater than 80, since this is if and else if, it won't even get to the else if. Remember, they're all, if I go back to this, these are all one big chunk. If one of these are true, it's never going to do one of the other ones. It'll keep going until it finds a true one, and then since we have an else, you're always guaranteed to have something. So we'll go down to the next one. So say else if number is greater than or equal to 70. And then we said that would be a C. Okay. And then another one. Number is greater than or equal to 60. We said it was going to be a D. And then now we can just say else. That's going to be our last thing. So if the number is not greater than 90 or equal to 90, not greater than or equal to 80, not greater than or equal to 70, not greater than or equal to 60, then else, if it's not any of that, then we know that it's a failing grade. So you can say else, or you can say elif if number is less than 60. Both of them mean the exact same thing. I'm just going to show with this example just to show if statements, else if statements, and then just else statements. And then we can only have one return statement. So at the very end, we're going to return out. So if you remember, return basically allows us to assign a variable to a function. So if we want, we can say a is equal to letter grade of 100. We'll say 98. So now a is going to be assigned, just happen to be a. Because when we put in 98, 98 is greater than or equal to 90, and then it's going to skip the rest of this because this first thing was true. And then when we return out, this is now equal to what out is. So then a equals that. So we can do it like that, or we can just print it. They do the same thing. So I'm just going to print a bunch of these just to show if our code works. So I'll do one for every, so we have a 98, 1188, we'll have a 78, we'll have a 68, and we'll have a 38. So if we did this right, it should be A, B, C, D, and then an F. So when we run this, forgot my equal signs. And I just can't spell. You guys get to see how picky Python is. One simple losing an equal sign or simple R not being included in this completely wiped out your code. And as you see, A, B, C, D, and F. So if you guys did that, you got 100 on the quiz. And that's all I really have for else if statements. In the next videos following, I'm going to be posting a lot of review videos, just mainly asking big questions on everything that we learned so far, just to make sure you guys got all of it. As always, leave a comment, join the Discord if you're confused on anything. But in the very next video, it's going to be a lot of just like odds and ends, just like little stuff I'm just going to like kind of fill in the gaps with some topics. There's like a lot of just like little syntax stuff that's like a little, basically like tips and tricks. And then the video after that, it's going to be completely for you guys. I'm going to have probably 3 to 4 quiz-like questions that combine everything that I've really talked about, just to make sure you guys are caught up on track and whatnot. Just make sure you got it. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're interested. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.